24/7. If they have issues, if their goods were not delivered, who do they call? These are things that are becoming more critical. So measuring the experience, understanding the needs of the customer, and then working backwards through the entire journey to say what are the things that the customers expect at each of these is also critical. And as you manage that, customers want ease and convenience, so they naturally come to those companies to transact.
Absolutely. So this is really innovating at the speed of the consumers or the customers' thoughts. Dr. Moyo, I'm going to round off with you. I have a question. This sort of brings government, the players, the regulators, everything in one pot. So this is just saying, in practical terms, could you just describe how Africa can integrate the fourth industrial revolution into its financial system in this 21st century? In practical terms, how could we achieve this?
Thank you, moderator. Let me put on the table 3 or 4 key issues that I think will be helpful. Number 1 for me is that the biggest problem in Africa currently is that whilst there is awareness, there is appreciation of the 4.0 industry. That appreciation is not deep. It's not deep enough in government. It is deep in the private sector. But our governments have not embraced fully the fourth industrial revolution. So the starting point for me is what a government like South Africa has done to put together a technical working group, a kind of commission on 4.0 industry, to advise government technically to study the situation, the current dynamics, the current stock of various technologies, digital technologies and others within the country, and advise government so that it is fully informed. This is necessary for all the governments in Africa. They need to have some kind of a technical working group that is going to advise government. And that group to be composed of various players, technical players, private sector, your academics, your civil society, the policy makers. Then they can advise properly. You have information. So that's number 1 for me. Number 2 for me would be real government to put in place a legal framework, a regulatory framework that is going to enable entrepreneurs, innovators, industry, fintechs, and everybody that is involved, so that they have a place, they have a framework, they have the legal environment. Them. They are not doing this behind doors. They are not hiding. They know that what they are doing is lawful, is helping the government. So there is a need for a comprehensive legally and regulatory framework. And if all African countries should do that, taking from the technical group, that will be feeding into this value chain of knowledge of 4.0. Number 3 for me, moderator, is the need for digital infrastructure. The digital infrastructure in Africa is still pathetic. Africa is still lagging behind the rest of the world, particularly the countries south of Sahara. There are a few countries like your Kenya and a number of countries that are coming up with Morocco, Mauritius, probably Nigeria, South Africa, but the rest of other countries, in terms of the digital infrastructure, the bandwidth, the internet penetration, and the internet density is still low. So we need the access for people. So governments, together with other stakeholders, should invest in making sure the backbone of 4.0 is laid out throughout the country. And number 4 for me is I think it is critical that the African Union has already come up with the digital transformation strategy 2021 or 2020 to 2025. I think all African countries should subscribe, and that document should not remain a document in the AU walls in Addis. That document should be a living document. And African governments, African policymakers, academics, and private sector, everybody should look at that document because it covers a lot. I think it's a draft now. I'm not sure whether it is fully adopted. I'm not sure. But it is a document that can be used. And these are some of the things that can be done. But otherwise, the most critical one is for government to ensure that there is what I call cooperation. There is cooperation and competition at the same time, where all these players are cooperating, but at the same time, where it's necessary, there must be competition so that your pricing, your quality is increased. So the laws of cooperation should be put on place. Otherwise, these are some of the things. Broadly, though, they still need to be looked at, refined, and toothpicking of them should be done. But I submit that these are broad things that can be considered. I submit.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Moyo. It's been quite helpful and insightful to listen to that. I mean, the government and the private sector is very critical for us to succeed and integrate ourselves into the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you, Bode. Thank you, Afolabi. Having you on the panel is quite, I really enjoyed myself throughout this session. I'll hand over now to the studio to take it from there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so very much to our erudite discussants on the fourth revolution and integrating it on the continent of Africa in the financial sector. There's so many take-homes there that I see. That was so incisive that my moderator had to stretch the time to ensure that we all get the juicy deals out of it. But all in all, they have stressed the need for more collaborations and not competitions. They've also stressed the need to build digital infrastructure, good policies, and to ensure that citizens get value for what they opt for when they subscribe to your financial agencies, and overall upscaling and upskilling. Now that's the way to go for Africa. Now moving ahead, we are heading to the energy session, building blocks for sustainable energy recovery in Africa. And on this panel we have Minister of State for Power in Nigeria, Godi Jedi Agba, OFR, being represented by Debo Yosasi. He's a special assistant to the Honorable Minister of State Power, who joined the Civil Service of Nigeria at the federal level in 1984. A former Group General Manager, Crude Oil Marketing Division, Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, conferred with the National Order of Officer of the Order of the Federal Republic, OFR, in September 2012, and appointed the Minister of State for Power of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 2019. Still on this panel of discussants, we have Sami Iroche. He is Chairman, Strategic Alliance Promotion Company. He's a member of United Capital PLC Group, a former Executive Director Finance and Accounts, Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCU. We also have, who's been public and private sector consultant on negotiation, strategy, business development, and investment banking. Still on this panel, we have Engineer Abiye H. Membe, who is a founder and managing director, B Energy Consultancy Services Nigeria, a former group executive director, GD Exploration and Production of the NNPC, past chairman, Society of Petroleum Engineers, and Nigeria Council and Nigeria Gas Association, a fellow of the Nigeria Society of Engineers, an associate member, Nigerian Chartered Institute of Arbitration. And our moderator who will be taking over from me in a matter of minutes would be Erabo Okogun, a co-founder of Neomante, a sustainable energy and infrastructure project development expert who secured funds from world-class institutions such as the World Bank, IFC, FMO, European Investment Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, and Alton Energy Inspired Revolution for on-grid, off-grid, mini-grid, power PV, and much more. Well, it's now time to hand over to Nancy. Nancy is coming in now to take over from here. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Glory. Okay, just before we go into the energy session, proper, I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to everyone. It has been a packed day full of great thoughts, thought-provoking ideas, and bankable words from all of our guests and speakers across the continent. No doubt, the AEC is a flavored community where everyone's voice is heard and every thought counts. We aren't done just yet, as the energy session, which was just introduced by the MC. The energy session is the last session for today, which will commence shortly. Our focus on the energy session is building blocks for sustainable energy recovery in Africa. We will look at the emerging innovations in the energy sector, the reproducible and adaptable ideas in the sector, and see how Africa can transit from depleting sources to renewable energy that is sustainable and power-able in Africa. We must go beyond an Africa in darkness to an Africa that can power our own people. The day will not be over if I do not extend our sincere appreciation to our keynote speaker today, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the former president of Ghana, all our special guests and panelists on the individual sessions today, and our audience all across the world. We say thank you for that. So it is now time for us to take you through the energy session. So I'm looking forward to an exciting term. Thank you, Alice. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm afraid to say, don't shoot the messenger, is that a lot of landlocked countries in Africa will not be able to benefit from trade other than trade in services. And this is something which ironically has been sort of accelerated through this COVID period and possibly post-COVID period because of the adoption of digital technologies and the like. So that certainly provides an opportunity. Realistically, what we'll see is certain more accurately coastal economies benefiting, particularly where established trade relations currently exist. These are the countries which tend to gain all the sort of these economies stand to gain the most by liberalization of trade. My second point, however, is that what my general observation is across the continent currently, and the former president was talking about building back better. I totally agree with that. He made a very crucial point about private sector driven. However, what I'm observing is that increased protectionism, a trend towards import substitution, and we should not equate import substitution with industrial strategy. We have to clearly think through and balance the need for proactive industrial strategy, arguably, and free trade liberalization. How do those two intersect and be applied in a very, very pragmatic fashion?
of or the cups of the event happening in Glasgow at the minute, where our presidents are the negotiating table. The focus today is so apologies for a poor network that does not allow me to show my video, but I'll try as best as possible to navigate the session without the video, if you don't mind. So what we have is we have three esteemed and distinguished panelists, and the same points that we should look at. One is in terms of the fact that we have probably about 600 million people in Africa without access to electricity, and that's mostly in Nigeria. And then once the pandemic happened, we had even less people connected to the grid, or even having the ability to pay for electricity wherever they were. And so in Nigeria today, you have about 85 million people without access to reliable electricity, and that makes us the capital of the world in terms of lack of electricity. And obviously, you also have a situation whereby the lack of electricity is affecting the ability of the economy to really hit its potential. And so, according to the World Bank, I think annually the loss to our GDP is about $25 billion. And that is a significant amount in any currency. Talk less if you convert it to the naira. And so we're also looking at the whole global dimension around climate change, energy transition, around the C4All sort of roadmap, where you're looking at reduction in subsidies, in fossil fuel subsidies, cost reflective tariffs, and similar initiatives to make the economies of scale and scope. And so we have on the panel three distinguished and esteemed Nigerians who have excelled at the highest level in the fields of endeavor, and who will sort of take us through some of their views and experience over the last few years. And so we have represented the Honorable Minister of Power. We have a Special Technical Assistant. We also have Engineer Membere, who is former Group Executive Director of NNPC. And we have Dr. Sonny Roche, Chairman, Strategic Alliance Promotion Company, former Executive Director of TCN. And the way we'll proceed is that we would just spend about 15 minutes going around the panelists, where they make introductions further introductions of themselves, and also, do a bit of deep dive into their own areas. So for the Honorable Minister, would like to understand how the building blocks, what kind of building blocks on the policy level you would like to see to lead to us to this sort of area where we have the 85 million Nigerians covered. For Engineer Membere, who's been the Group Executive Director, we've seen things like local content, improve the ability of the GDP contribution in oil and gas to be increased. We've seen certain things, innovations like the PSCs, where private capital has come into the sector. So there's interesting benchmarks in oil and gas space, and obviously there's a need to have gas play some sort of transition role, particularly domestic gas, given the price of LPG as we have it today. we would also like to speak about private capital and private investments and public initiatives that, you know, Dr. Sonny Eruche can take us through. So having said that, maybe we can bring in, understand there's some audio challenges by the Honorable Minister. Maybe we can bring in Dr. Eruche at this stage and just talk us through his views around concessioning PPPs and raising the kind of financing, and what type of financing, or what kind of private investments, what kind of public sector initiatives can drive the inclusive growth, and also the kind of risk mitigations and investor confidence, and what kind of things investors should look at, and that government need to do to bring in the right investment into the sector. So, Dr. Eruche, please, you have the floor. Maybe we'll start with Mr. Gabriel. Apologies for the technical glitches.
Yeah, Mr. Eruche is muted. Can you tell him, Olasani, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes, sir.
It's been a battle connecting. I was bumped off and it was difficult to come back. Yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir. Welcome, sir.
Okay, we seem to be having a bit of a technological glitch in handling the session. We would just take some excerpts to keep you abreast of what and who has said what in the course of the sessions. We'll be back in a moment.
The problem is that, first of all, each of these infrastructure is totally inadequate. Nigeria, the energy infrastructure power, for instance, we are generating and supplying to consumers probably less than a quarter of what will be normally required to ensure that we can use energy as competitively. We can produce goods at energy costs that are competitive with other regions. The same thing with with the transport infrastructure, where the cost of transporting goods and services are so high because the infrastructure
for long-term infrastructure finance that the power sector requires. And then finally, given the privatization has happened, there's a push for deregulation. There's a push to unbundle further. So it'd be interesting to get your views on how to achieve that last mile of sustainable energy to the majority of Nigerians in terms of type of financing, in terms of public sector fiscal policies for investor confidence, in terms of the kind of risk mitigation that private investors would appreciate. And then finally, post-privatization, what sort of further unbundling or decentralization do you expect the market should go further? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. This indeed is a bunch of loaded questions, and let me attempt to take them one by one as I was able to jot them down. The type of financing clearly would be desirable equity, first and foremost. And to have equity in the power sector, you need deep pockets of people who are ready to wait a long-term investment. In more developed financial climes, usually fund such things with either long bonds or in America what you call Ginnie Maes. That is veterans long-term money that are placed for over 30 years. In Nigeria, the longest term money that we have, apart from some of the government bonds, if you look at bank deposits, 1 year, 2 years, but we also have government bonds. Government can raise bonds to go for this. Well, you can have the normal bonds, and you can also have green bonds that are targeted towards working towards the 2050 Paris climate net zero climate. That can really be a way of taking the cash flow away from the system. Then, when you talk about risk allocation is based on the fact that, well, you already have takers. In the case of the DISCOs, 11 of them have indeed been privatized. So let us leave that to the owners of those businesses. You have Eco, you have Ikeja, you have Enugu, you have Port Harcourt, you have Yola, you have all of them. Okay, so let us leave the ones that have already been privatized. But now, on the government policy, we already have the Electricity Sector Reform Act 2005. Everything is there. The letter is there, but the greater part of what we are dealing with is the spirit of the letter. We signed an agreement in 2018, 2019 with Siemens of Germany. Siemens is one of the biggest and reputable companies in the world. I don't know what has happened to that one. In January of this year, I'm aware that they signed the pre-engineering, and the Siemens deal is supposed to take care of both the DISCOs and the TCN, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, where I was executive director for 4 years. And that has been under the Presidential Power Initiative, which I had written a lot of articles to give kudos to the current administration for going that route of getting Siemens in a PPI schedule, whereby the German government will put down 85%, whereas the government will put down 15% counterpart funding. I don't know where that has reached. I think the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel was asked, and she cleverly parried away that question, which gives me the impression that that hasn't happened the way it was planned. Then the funding of power comes from what we all have been talking about. It has almost become a cliche that you must have a cost-reflective tariff. If you have a cost-reflective tariff on one hand, you also now have service level agreement in place that, okay, if you're going to pay market tariffs, therefore, you also have to make sure you give us X amount of power every day. But it now becomes a chicken and an egg situation. You cannot sell power less than the cost of generation. The numbers will not add up at all. So let us look seriously at NERC, the regulator of power sector, to look at the tariff regime, because if that tariff regime stays as it is and is not reflective of the cost, power is a commodity like any commodity. If you're a businessman and you're selling cars or you're selling tomato, the cost of production must be reflected in the price of the goods and commodity or services you are producing. Same ditto for electricity. Electricity is a product that has to make profit for the owners. The private investors who put their monies, who borrowed monies from financial institutions, will not sit back and say they are Father Christmas to anybody. It doesn't work like that. There is no Nigerian way of running the power sector. There's only the proper way. And the developed countries have achieved it. Other smaller countries have achieved it. There's nothing stopping Nigeria from achieving 24/7 power in Nigeria. I know we are limited with time. Let's now go to the unbundling. You mentioned unbundling, right? The only sector that is still under the purview of government is the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, which controls the national grid. And I know for certain that that NERC signed 2 licenses in 2014, 2 licenses, 1 for transmission service provider and 2 for independent ISO, independent service provider. So what has happened with that one, I don't know. Maybe the Honorable Minister of State for Power, I saw it's supposed to be here, or whoever his representative is on this panel, should give us a feedback on what has happened to that.
Yes, sir. If I could go further, just based on your experience, so recently, on 2 levels, Lagos State had a stakeholders session, and they said in Lagos, about 20 million people, using Lagos as the economic and industrial center, epicenter of West Africa, essentially. Lagos City require, I think, perhaps about 3 gigawatts or today, but maybe in the next 2 years, they probably require 5 to 10 gigawatts of power. But TCN is only able through, I think, the Ajah 330 and the other one from the Abeokuta axis. It's only able to interconnect Lagos on these 2 transmission lines, which have limited capacity. And so, based on your experience in TCN, how is it that there can be generation wheeled into Lagos that would, because the rule of thumb is that for 1 million people in the working population, you need about 1 gigawatts into being a developed sort of ranking. So if in Lagos you have 16 million people on the average, let's say 10 million of those, or half of those are working, then the first question, sir, is how does Lagos get that 8 gigawatts given the constraints on the grid? Secondly, sir, I know one of the critical things for having a robust, stable network is spinning reserves. And usually spinning reserves helps a stable state. But it seems as if it's been difficult to get spinning reserves put in place. Perhaps, I believe, it's the financial issues. So maybe perhaps you could give us some insight into how spinning reserves work. But the first question is really, how do you get 8 gigawatts into Lagos with a centralized TCN system, sir?
You seem to have answered the question by saying to me How do you think we can get 8 gigawatts to Lagos with a centralized national grid? So it presupposes that you're probably inferring that we should decentralize TCN. That's not the problem. The problem of power in Nigeria, to be honest with you, is cash flow. It's cash flow. If the numbers don't add up, the entire value chain suffers, starting from the gas supplier. The gas supplier supplies gas to the generation companies, the GENCOs. The GENCOs generate and throw it up to the national grid for TCN to wheel power to the DISCOs. Then on the other side, on the commercial end, the monies have to be collected by the bulk purchaser, MBET, that will now pay TSP, also MBET itself, and the NEC and all the market participants. If the numbers don't add up, you will not have enough funding for acquisition of reserve. So I thought that all what you have asked now are supposed to have been addressed by the Presidential Power Initiative by Siemens. The question you should be asking really is, what has happened to the PPI with Siemens, which said by the end of 2022 will ramp up power to 7,000 megawatts. Out of 7,000 megawatts, perhaps Lagos could get their 3,000 megawatts that they want, because Lagos, I know, as Executive Director of Finance, was responsible to between 35 to 40% of the income or revenue collected by the power sector. So government can agree, or the system can agree to give Lagos a huge percentage of the 7,000. And now said after 7,000, the plan was to move up to 10 by 2025, and then 25,000. As if that Siemens agreement has failed, let us know. Let Nigerians know that it has failed. If it has any hitches, let us know where the hitches are. When the initiative first came up, I wrote extensively about it. I applauded it. I said, but what is important is that the spirit of the agreement must be larger than what is written down in black and white. I also said there must also be a technical committee that is put in place to ensure fair and proper pricing of whatever Siemens was going to bring into Nigeria, and importantly, human capacity development in the power sector to put Nigerians to understudy whatever Siemens is doing. Don't forget that Siemens is looking at the transmission side and the distribution side. The distribution side, I don't know how they're going to handle it, because those are privately owned now. To now,
reason that Delta State
of
gets
a hotel service, for instance. I don't know how they're going to handle it. Maybe that is part of the problem they are having. But to answer your question, the major Achilles heel of the power sector is improper pricing of electricity. That's the major problem. If we get the pricing right, Nigerians might think they are suffering on the short term, but on the long term, what we are doing today as Nigerians is we are really getting off-grid power by our generators, by our inverters, by all manner of off-grid power equipment that we have. If you monetize all those things, also monetize the health hazard of the pollution that the generators emit. And we are also talking about climate change, 2050 net zero emission. So when you put all those things together, Nigeria is in the cul-de-sac. It is a tough one for the country that needs serious leadership. Leadership leadership is very key to understand. I heard people say they want to run for president 2023. None of them even understands the power sector. They don't know the difference between kerosene and gas. I'm sorry to say that. So we need serious leadership in the power sector. We need serious leadership in the country to understand the enormity of the challenges of the power sector.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. It's very thought-provoking points, and maybe we'll
I hope I was able to answer some of your questions because
you did. Although I obviously would have loved to talk about the need to also have options. If Siemens are working, we have AFDB, we have the Japanese in JICA, and all other options. But I don't know.
Sorry. AFDB will give you money. It is as far as director, executive director, we had about 350 million from AFDB. We also had 150 million from Just Development Francais. It's not the money.
Yes.
It's not the money from all these agencies. It is the commitment for us to know what we are supposed to do, to know the regulation of the industry, to make sure that if, as a banker, if I give you a loan, I'm not looking at the asset you pledge. I'm looking at the mode of life that is generated from the cash flow of the business. So if we throw billions of dollars on, towards the power sector and we don't ensure the repayment, it doesn't make any sense. JICA, AFDB, are banks in the world. If you don't look at the structural defects in the value chain of our, we turn money after what's not working.
All right, sir. I don't know if Barrister Gabriel, the Special Technical Assistant of the Honorable Minister, whether he's online, or Engineer Abiy Membere. If they're online, please signify. We would like to please tap into your various wells of knowledge and share in this very very exciting conversation we're having.
Good evening. My name is Abiy Membere. I'm online.
Oh, good evening, sir. Very quickly, sir, I wanted to touch on some points just based on your experience from a GED, ENP, and NPC, and your work in NAPIMS, and also your work in the private sector. One of the critical things that we're looking at very quickly, sir, is the fact that we have a very successful export of gas business, and we're building more trains in LNG. But domestically, we have a lot of gas, but either it's a problem of associated versus unassociated. Is an issue of pricing. So very quickly, sir, I have 4 questions. One is, how do you make
Arsenal
why
everything, and
obviously reducing gas flaring in the process? Second question, sir, is the excellent benchmarks in the EMP sector, for instance, local content that can support transition into renewables. There's the PSC, when there was issues with cash flow, NAPIMS and NPC,
and the 2 all
with
own, and then
time. And then we did some work in the North Sea, and we've seen the transition of oil and gas experts moving into offshore wind. So therefore, there's been a fantastic transfer of skills in other environments where we have similar skills into other energy verticals. So, sir, if you wish, in 2 broad strokes, how can we get gas more available domestically in a clean and steady flow? Benchmarks globally and locally, able to create the skills transfer that makes the energy basket deeper beyond just hydrocarbons, but using hydrocarbons skill sets as a jump off point.
Erabo, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I would say this is a panel session on energy that I always want to be discussing, especially on the upstream sector. My senior brother has talked about the finance on the power sector. Domestic gas sustainability is a strong function of finance. How much fund can you inject into it? In our own climb, I think a lot of efforts have been put in, especially to fund the infrastructure. One of those key infrastructure.
To more games coming after the
pipeline.
National break. Let's say really went down in time. You look at
west to east.
On is one.
That project started some years back when I was a GED, and it is at the advanced stage of completion. Until such a huge infrastructure is set in place, it will be difficult for us to achieve a sustainable domestic gas in any country. The second key project that underpins sustainability of gas is the AKK, because it's easier to transport gas through pipeline than using the LNG or any compressed method. AKK was set up way back 2012-2013. It's also at advanced stages of funding. However, I really don't know at this stage what the financing situation is. The reason why I said that is the initial design was to ensure that, yes, if you have a huge gas in the east, which is in the east, I mean from Bayelsa all the way to Calabar, and compared to where you have it from the west, from Delta all the way to Benin, the way the Niger Delta is structured, eastern and western Niger Delta, you will be able to move gas freely from one area to another. So that infrastructure is key. Secondly, there's also an gas infrastructure project that is designed to move gas to the northern sector. Like what you are going to experience in the power sector, we try to avoid it in the upstream sector. You don't generate power in AFAM and then send it to the national grid before you redistribute it. That's waste of energy. So with gas, what we want to do is move the gas straight to where the power generator is. And it is a lot easier than using a compressed gas and then decompressing it before you utilize it. So until these key natural gas infrastructures are in place, it will be difficult for us to have a sustainable domestic gas supply in country. With respect to clean energy, to cooking, yes, LPG distribution has been growing steadily. I think this is also why we need the government policy towards how we can continue to increase the LPG supply to those areas that are still locked in with firewood and kerosene. But the key here is government have to come up with a dedicated LPG plan. There are times we have to have a flexibility or a compromise between profitability of export versus local utilization of LPG, because the spin-off effect on our GDP will be higher compared to when we export. Now, with respect to local content on renewables, one of the key challenge here in Nigeria is there are no researches and financing of research projects. If you have to do solar, virtually almost everything apart from the cable is imported into the country. So yes, you have the technologies or the skill set to install and manage it, but to manufacture even the solar panels will require something that we do have, but we've not developed it to a point where we can develop our own panels, one way or the other. And so, yes, it's an area that is growing fast, but we have to look for a way to be able to reap the benefit, if possible. A policy for us to bring in knockdown parts of the panels, install them in Nigeria and use them. It will create the necessary jobs that will require to move the economy. With respect to wind, and yes, we have the enormous resource with respect to wind. Niger Delta and the offshore environment is all wind. But as I said, yes, one key thing is data and information that we require to be able to design our own. Initially, it's going to be a bit difficult, but this is 21st century. If you can design, you can copy. So government policy of encouraging wind as a source of renewable energy is something that is, I would say, is long overdue, because we have our coastline or offshore lines that are so huge that we can do a lot of things. If for nothing else, copy the North Sea model. I think with respect to financing, yes, we've utilized the PSCs. They are matured with respect to what we use them for. We developed the PSC type model even in the JV with modified carrier and all sorts of names. I'm currently talking about technical and financial services type agreement. These are all financing instruments to develop upstream hydrocarbons sector. All these are still in existence. More will still come as we look forward to the divestment of the majors between Shell and Mobil in the nearest future.
Thank you very much, Engineer. Really exciting to hear your views, and you put them very succinctly and in a very structured manner. I think I'll bring in the Honorable Minister. I think his audio is better. It's very quickly. We're out of time, unfortunately. I don't know, the Honorable Minister, if you could please give us some very quick points around how the policy building blocks are being put together. We've seen NERC come up with service-based tariffs. There's been a movement to cost-reflective tariffs. We've seen the CBN work to create payment discipline, and get the banks to carry out the collection, increasing the cash flow to embed. We've seen REA perform excellently well, working with donors to bring about 10,000 different mini-grid sites. We also have government policy generally looking at energy mix, energy security, and looking at other ways of decentralizing, sub-franchising, and all that sort of stuff. Now, at the back of COP26, which is going on now, if you very quickly, sir, you could just tell us what we expect from the Ministry of Power in terms of policy to accelerate bringing in sustainable finance, because we've heard finance is key, creating collaboration between upstream mature financing models, as we've seen, in PSCs, and also tying it into investor confidence and policy stability. So I know it's a lot, sir, but I can see that you are a man who is very versed in these things, and so please, you have the floor, sir.
Well, I want to thank you very much, and before I make any interventions, let me quickly apologize for the absence of the Honorable Minister of State, Dr. Godi Jedi Agba, who is presently at COP20. He would have loved to be here personally, but due to his itinerary out there, he couldn't, join. But he asked that I should offer his unreserved apologies. Thank you very much. Mr. Arabo, you've done a good overview of what's going on in the power sector as far as policy and some of the mileages we've made here.
Sorry, Minister, my name is Iroche, not Irabo. Iroche, Sonny Iroche.
No, actually, I'm addressing the moderator. I think it's Irabo. Okogun, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. No, just quickly, in view of the time constraint we have, the moderator mentioned a number of things: service-based tariff, energy mix, investment in the sector, and all of that. COP26. I will just try and make a few comments. As you are aware, the present administration is pursuing very vigorously all policies that will lead to Nigerians enjoying adequate, safe and reliable and affordable power. Now, currently, the surface-based tariff that has been introduced is, from the angle of the ministry, it is, sustainable. It was targeted even improved service quality, and we have reports that we have received indicate that this is good and service is improved, and we are hoping that with the service level agreements that have been put in place, compensations also will be paid to customers where DISCOs fail to meet, the performance targets.
I think we had lost the Honorable Minister's representative.
I hope it's not power failure.
I was going to say that.
Well,
it is lack of gas. It is lack of gas.
Hello.
I have no comments to those two remarks.
So then we have enormous gas. Our asset Niger Delta is so matured. Because of the maturity, you produce more gas as the wells get matured. So gas production gas supply is not an issue at all.
So why if
you have so much gas, the question I wanted to ask is, so nobody goes to, Minister is back. Sorry,
yes.
sir.
Yes. Now, quickly on removal of subsidy. This is ongoing. And if you recall, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, recently at the opening of the Nigerian Association of Energy Economists, I think that was as recent as July, he gave the indication that the subsidy will be fully removed by And so can confidently say that this process is on course, and the government is determined to put everything in place to ensure that subsidy in the power sector is fully removed by 2022.
Yes, sir.
Now, on COP26, you are aware that as party to the Paris Agreement, clearly Nigeria ought to remove emissions, and the current plan by next, by of emissions in emissions is achieved, and this has implication for the power sector, because as we work towards renewable energy and more efficient ways of utilizing energy, emissions produced by fossil fuels and generators will be removed, and that will improve the environment. And on the issue of decentralization, you know that the government is working hard to ensure that targeted firstly, and REA is doing well in this area. You are aware of the energizing education programs, which targets at providing off-grid power to education. So much work, and within these areas have also are now enjoying
There's a day, a wonderful time to you.
Power,
and we have started. Will be going on smoothly as we start, even better when we return with the Tuesday package. From all of us here at the Basi, do have yourself a splendid day.
No.
Okay, well, it's off. So
okay, there are some.
okay, go ahead.
Everybody,
Yes, there was a comment that had to do with regional. Yes, subsidy. That's, I think the same from Abuja had the first question. Then there was subsidies. I just want to start from the lady who was talking about since it's an African economic session, that we should also touch around regional efforts, because we're in ECOWAS, we have the AFC after as well. So I know that the barrister has represented Nigeria on regional power pools, West African power pool. I don't know if the barrister, the Honorable Minister's representative, can tell us how this West African power pool can benefit.
We've come to the point where we have to say goodbye. We've had such a robust discussion, and when it comes to energy and gas supply in Nigeria, the discussion never ends. But garnering from what has been said so far, ensuring that we have electricity in Nigeria 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year, would have to do with funds sufficiency. And of course, with government
21.
2022, the stuff
cultural heritage
be removed. The